The bankman set the notice on my kitchen table like it weighed nothing, though it might as well have been a stone dropped straight through the floorboards. 30 days, Mr. Calder. 30 days, or the county takes everything your father bled for. I didn't say a word back to him. I just watched him tip his hat and ride off toward town, and I sat there a long while with that paper staring up at me, the ink still wet enough to smear if I'd touched it. My name is Thomas Calder, and I'd inherited nothing from my father but debt, dust, and a name folks in Prescott Hollow said with a little too much pity in their voices. He tried to make that ranch into something grand once, before the drought years took the cattle and the bank took his spirit clean out of him. He died owing more than the land was worth, and I'd spent 6 years since trying to claw it back into something worth keeping. Most nights I told myself I was close. That notice told me otherwise. I hadn't planned on a wife. A man drowning doesn't go looking for someone to hand him a rock to hold on to. But my Aunt Ruth, who ran the boarding house in town, had written off to an agency back east without so much as asking me, and 3 weeks before that bank man came knocking, a letter arrived saying a young woman named Eleanor Whitfield would be arriving on the Thursday stage, ready to be married if I was willing. I wasn't willing. Not really. But Ruth stood in my kitchen with her hands on her hips and said, "Thomas Calder, you cannot run that ranch alone forever, and you cannot keep living like a man who's already given up before the fight's begun." So I put on my one clean shirt and went to meet the stage, mostly to tell this Eleanor Whitfield she'd wasted her fare. She stepped down before I'd even gotten close enough to offer a hand, which told me plenty about her right away. She wore a traveling dress the color of good coffee, no lace, no frills, practical boots beneath the hem, and she carried her own trunk like she'd done it 100 times and didn't need a man's help to prove otherwise. Her hair was the color of wheat gone dark with rain, pulled back tight, and her eyes were the kind of pale blue that looked straight through a person rather than at them. "Mr. Calder, I presume," she said, and there was something clipped in the way she said it, something too polished for a woman answering a mail-order advertisement. "That's right," I said. "Miss Whitfield. Mrs. Calder, soon enough, if the arrangement suits us both." She said it plain, no blush, no softness, like she was discussing the weather. It rankled me a little, though I couldn't rightly say why. I looked at her fine dress, her fine boots, the way she held herself like she'd grown up somewhere with marble floors and servants to fetch her tea, and I felt the old shame crawl up the back of my neck, the one that had lived there since I was a boy watching my father sign papers he couldn't understand. A woman like this didn't belong on a ranch that was 30 days from ruin. "You sure you got the right advertisement, ma'am?" I said. "I didn't write one word about being a man of means. I've got a house with a leaking roof and a herd half what it used to be, and a banknote that'll likely take the whole of it before the year's out." Something flickered across her face then, gone as quick as it came. "I did not come here for means, Mr. Calder," she said. "I came here because it was as far from where I was as a stagecoach could carry me." I didn't understand what she meant by that, not then, and I was too proud and too tired to ask. I only nodded and loaded her trunk onto the wagon, and we rode back to the ranch mostly in silence, the kind that sits heavy between two people who've each decided the other one is hiding something. Ruth married us 3 days later in the front room of the boarding house, quick and plain, with the preacher rushing through the words like he had somewhere better to be. Eleanor wore the same coffee-colored dress. I wore the same clean shirt. Either of us said much more than the vows required, and that night I slept in the barn and let her have the house to herself because it seemed the decent thing to do, and because I didn't know what else a man was supposed to do with a stranger he just promised his whole life to. The weeks that followed were not easy ones. Eleanor rose before dawn, same as me, and I'll give her this much. She was not afraid of work. She learned to milk a cow with hands that had clearly never done rougher than needlework, and she scrubbed that kitchen floor on her knees until it shone, and she never once complained, not about the wind that came through the walls at night, not about the beans and cornbread that made up most of our supper. But there was a wall around her all the same, one built of good manners and careful words, and I couldn't find the door into it. "You don't talk much about where you're from," I said one evening, watching her mend a shirt by lamplight, her stitches small and even. "There isn't much worth telling," she said, not looking up. "A woman doesn't cross half a country to marry a stranger over nothing worth telling." She set the needle down then, and for just a breath I saw something raw pass behind her eyes before she covered it back over. "Some things are easier left where they happened, Mr. Calder," she said. "I think a man staring down a bank notice would understand keeping certain matters private. That struck close enough to the bone that I let it lie." We were two people circling each other with our wounds tucked up under our arms, each one certain the other wouldn't understand, and maybe that certainty was its own kind of wound too. It was Ruth, of course, who let something slip weeks later over pie at the boarding house. "That girl of yours," she said. "The agency man told me her family's got money back in Boston. Whitfield Shipping, if you can believe it. Strange thing, a girl like that answering a mail order notice." I turned that over the whole ride home, and it settled in my chest like a stone. Money. A family with money, and she crossed the country to marry a man with none. That night I asked her straight out, standing in the kitchen with the last of the daylight going gray in the window. "Your family's got money?" I said. "Whitfield Shipping? That true?" Her face went pale, then hard like a door slamming shut behind glass eyes. "Who told you that?" "Ruth heard it from the agency." She was quiet a long moment, her hands twisting in her apron. "It's true," she said finally. "My father is Elias Whitfield. And yes, there's money." There was also a man my father intended me to marry, a business partner named Garrett Voss, twice my age, with a temper he didn't trouble himself to hide from me even during our courting. I told my father I wouldn't marry him. My father told me I had no say in the matter, so I took what money I had saved and I wrote to an agency, and I came here, to the one place I thought no one would think to look for a Whitfield. I stood there feeling like a fool, and something colder besides. "So this," I said, gesturing between us, "this marriage, it's not about wanting a home, it's about running from one." "Does it matter which it is, so long as I've kept my word to you? I've worked this land same as you. I've never once shirked a chore or spoken a cross word. It matters to me," I said, and my voice came out harder than I meant it. "I don't want to be some woman's hiding place, Eleanor. I've spent my whole life being looked down on for what I don't have. I won't spend it being a place somebody settles for either." She looked at me then with something close to fury. "You think I settled? You think I looked at a struggling ranch and a man with a bank notice on his table and thought, 'Ah, yes, this will do'? I chose this, Mr. Calder. I chose it over a life with silk curtains and a husband who'd have broken something in me within the year. If that isn't reason enough for you, then perhaps you and I were never suited to begin with." She walked out to the porch after that, and I let her go, too proud and too stung to follow. We didn't speak of it again for near 2 weeks, moving around each other in that careful silence. Married strangers learn quick, passing the salt, tending the same fences, sleeping under the same roof and further apart than the miles she'd traveled to get here. But something had shifted even in the silence. I noticed the way she hummed while she worked the garden when she thought I wasn't near. I noticed she'd started leaving coffee poured for me before I even came in from the barn, still warm like she'd been listening for my boots. And I noticed, God help me, that I'd started listening for hers too, that the house felt different with her in it. Less like a place I was failing to keep, and more like a place worth keeping at all. The bank notice, though, hadn't gone anywhere, and the 30 days had worn down to 12. I hadn't told her the full weight of it, only that money was tight. Pride again, I suppose, the same pride that had kept my father from ever asking for help until the help was long past useful. It was Eleanor who found the notice, folded up behind the flour tin where I'd hidden it like a man hides shame. She held it up when I came in from the fields, her face gone tight. 12 days, she said. You knew this the whole time and you said nothing? Wasn't your burden to carry? I'm your wife, Thomas. Whatever burden sits on this land sits on me too, whether you tell me of it or not. She set the paper down careful, like it might burn her fingers. I have money. Not much, but enough, perhaps, to buy us time. I want to send for it. I won't take your money, Eleanor. Why not? Because your pride would rather lose the ranch than owe something to a woman? The words landed hard because they were true, and I hated her a little for saying them, and loved her a little more for not being afraid to. Because the last time a Calder took money he couldn't pay back, I said. It broke my father clean in two. I watched him become a man who couldn't look his own son in the eye. I won't become that. Eleanor's face softened then, all the sharp edges going gentle. Then let it be a gift, not a loan, she said. Let me choose to give it, same as I chose to come here. You don't have to earn everything you're given, Thomas. Some things are simply offered because someone wants to offer them. I didn't answer her that night, but 2 days later a rider came through from the east, a hired man asking after a woman matching Eleanor's description, saying Mr. Garrett Voss had sent him to bring his intended bride home to Boston, whatever the cost. Eleanor went white as flour when she heard it, and that night she came to me in the barn where I still mostly slept, and she was shaking. "He's found me," she said. "He'll not stop until he has me back, Thomas, and my father will hand me over gladly because a broken engagement to a business partner is worth more to him than his own daughter's happiness." I stood up from the hay bale I'd been sitting on. "Nobody's taking you anywhere you don't choose to go. You don't understand what he is." "I don't need to. I understand what you are. And I understand I made a vow in front of a preacher, and I intend to keep it. Notice or no notice, money or no money." The rider came back 2 days later with Voss himself, a broad man in a city coat that looked wrong against the dust of Prescott Hollow, and he made his case right there in the town square on a Sunday after church, loud enough for half the county to hear, saying Eleanor Whitfield was promised to him long before some dirt farmer got his hands on her, and that the marriage out here didn't count for anything back east where it mattered. Eleanor stood beside me, her chin up, her hands trembling at her sides where nobody but me could see, and I felt the old fear rising in my chest, the fear that had followed me my whole life, that I wasn't enough, that a woman like this deserved a life I couldn't give her, that maybe the kindest thing, the only decent thing, was to step back and let her go somewhere she wouldn't have to fight so hard just to keep warm in winter. "Eleanor," I said, low enough that only she could hear, "you don't have to stay and watch this. You could go back with him, settle it proper, and whoever marries you after, whoever ends up standing where I'm standing now, that man is going to be the luckiest fool in this territory. You're worth more than watching a ranch go under with a man who couldn't even keep the bank off his own land." She turned to look at me then, right in front of that whole gathered crowd, in front of Voss and the preacher and half the town, and her eyes were wet, but her voice didn't shake at all. "I was hoping it would be you," she whispered. The square went quiet enough I could hear my own heartbeat. She reached over and took my hand, right there where everyone could see, and held it like she meant never to let it go. "I did not travel 2,000 miles and marry a stranger to be handed off again the moment things turned difficult," she said louder now, so Voss and my neighbors both could hear her plain. "I chose this life. I chose this man. And no notice, no debt, no man from Boston is going to unmake that choice for me." Voss sputtered something about her father's wishes and the impropriety of it all, but the crowd had already turned, the way a crowd does when it senses the truth of a thing. And old Mrs. Hargrove from the Mercantile said loud enough for everyone, "Sounds to me like the lady's made her feelings known, and a gentleman would take his leave." Voss looked around at the faces turned against him and had the sense, finally, to climb back onto his horse and ride off toward the stage line, muttering the whole way. That should have been the end of the trouble, but the notice on the bank still sat with 9 days left on it, and no amount of standing brave in a town square pays off a debt. I went to the bank myself that week, prepared to hear the worst, prepared to hand over the keys to a house that had broken my father and very nearly broken me too. But Eleanor came with me, and before the manager could speak, she set an envelope on his desk, thick with bills, more money than I'd seen in one place in all my years on that land. "This is my money," she said, "earned before I ever left Boston, and it is mine to spend as I see fit. I am spending it on my husband's land, so that it may remain his and mine, for as long as we both draw breath on it." I wanted to argue. God knows 6 months earlier I would have, but I looked at her standing there, chin up, daring that bank manager to say one word against her, and I understood something I hadn't let myself understand before. Pride had cost my father everything he loved. I wasn't going to let it cost me the one thing worth keeping. "Let her," I said when the manager looked to me for some kind of permission. "It's her money to give, same as it's my land to keep. We'll pay her back every dollar in cattle and crops and whatever else this land yields, but we'll do it together." The bank manager counted the bills, stamped the notice paid, and just like nothing at all, the weight that had been sitting on my chest for 6 years lifted clean off. We rode home that evening with the sun going down gold over the wheat fields, and Eleanor leaned her head against my shoulder without a word needing to be said about it. The house that had felt like a burden for so long looked different in that light, looked like something worth calling home. That winter, when the first real snow came down soft over the ranch, I built a fire in the front room and sat with Eleanor while she read to me from a book she'd carried the whole way from Boston, the one thing besides the money she hadn't been willing to leave behind. I thought about that day in the town square, about the words I'd said meaning to let her go, and the words she'd whispered back that had done the opposite, had bound us together tighter than any vows spoken in front of a preacher ever could. "I meant it, you know," I told her that night, watching the firelight move across her face. "What I said out there about whoever married you being lucky, I just didn't know yet that fool was going to be me. She smiled the kind of smile she never let anyone else see, the one that had taken me months to earn. I knew it the moment you didn't take my hand off the stagecoach, she said. You looked at me like a woman, not like a solution to a problem. I'd never once been looked at that way before. Outside, the snow kept falling, quiet and steady, covering the fences and the fields and the whole hard road that had brought us both to that fire. My father's debt was paid. My mother's shame was buried under years I no longer carried the same way. And the woman beside me, the one who could have had silk curtains and a life without dust under her fingernails, had chosen this instead, had chosen me, and kept choosing me every morning she rose before dawn to build a fire in a house that was finally, truly ours. I still think sometimes about that day in the square, about how close I came to letting pride talk me into giving her up for her own good. And I think about the way she looked at me and whispered those 7 words that changed the whole shape of my life. And I understand now that the luckiest man in Prescott Hollow was never some stranger who might have married her instead. It was me, standing right there, nearly too foolish to see it.